Today we've got part 9 of our Premier Stratocaster style guitar build, and we're really getting these two going. To refresh everybody's memory, if you haven't seen anything but part 9, but this episode, you have got to go back to the beginning. Part 0 was an introduction to the series, and then 1 through 8 were all parts and different steps like I teach at a local community college. And I've taken you through the way that we go through it in a very methodical process. So if you're interested in learning basic guitar, Fender style guitar building, you know, this is the place to be, because we're going to go in detail that you probably won't find anywhere else. And every episode I say I've got supporting documents in PDF versions that are documents that I give to my class to kind of see basically by episode here, but by class there, what we're going to cover in each period. And then also a parts list and other little things that might help you kind of follow along with the build that we're doing in this video series. If you don't have those documents, don't be shy about it. I need you to ask for them. I'm not posting them online. So click to the website link in the description below, and then go to the contact page there and just say, hey Steve, can you send me the documents for your Strat build? And boom, within a day or so, I will get those documents to you, and you'll be able to follow along this entire series a whole lot better. I've got many people asking why I don't put out more videos, and strictly time is the reason and the answer to that, and if you've been watching, you understand that. Recently, I opened up a Patreon account, so folks that would like to see me do more videos can subscribe there. And see that in the description below also. But what that'll do is I'm going to try to raise some funds to outsource my post-production, because that's really what slows me down in doing videos. Not so much the recording, but the post-production. So if that strikes you in a certain way, in the description below, click on the link to Patreon, look at the different levels, and certainly help me get to the point where I can outsource a lot of my post-production work, and therefore save my time for other things and have more content on YouTube. So this whole series I've been working with the templates that I make and I sell through our website at MaximumGuitarWorks.com, and again, the description below will have links to the website and the different areas that you can find the products that we sell. And we sell tools and jigs and such like that. But we've been using these throughout the entire process, and we're doing 2 different types of guitars as kind of like a recap summary. We started with this one, and this is a solid alder body, and we made a flame maple neck with a rosewood fretboard on this one here, and that is probably going to get an opaque paint finish, but we did a swimming pool route so we could get crazy with the pickups and we could do anything we want. I don't know if I've totally decided, but I'm leaning towards an HH style guitar on this guy. And then we did this, and we did a video talking about how you do repairs to some of the Claro walnut that I'm selling on the website. Some of the Claro walnut is absolutely grade 5 stuff and it's ready to work with, and then there's other grade 1, grade 2 that might have stress fractures in it. When I resoled it, I kind of discover certain things like that. But this was an example that we showed in some of our previous videos of how to repair that, and this is basically epoxy fill, and you can look in the past video to see how we did that. But off camera, what I did is I made a neck for this guy almost the same way that we made this. So refer back to the early episodes on neck making. But this time I found a piece of Claro walnut that was long enough to make a neck out of it. So that's what I did here. So beautiful piece of Claro walnut, and then we've got a Wenge fretboard, and that'll really darken up once it gets oiled down. I decided to do for the inlay is dots made of epoxy fill, exactly the same ingredients that I use to fill the cracks in this top to tie the neck to this, in both the fill and also the fact that the Claro walnut and the Claro walnut I thought would be really kind of cool to kind of bring those all together. So that's what we did with that neck. So we're going to use less templates today. There is going to be one part that I need templates, and I'll probably pull that out and do a separate video of it. But let's just jump into the steps, going right down the task by episode sheet. If you have that handy, refer back to that, and we're going to cover those items. So on the altar body guitar, we are going to use a pretty traditional tremolo system. Actually, it's going to be a hip shot, model number 42100, and that's a 2-point style tremolo system. Now, what you'll see on the templates is there's 6 holes for more of a vintage style, but if you use the 2 outer holes, that perfectly matches the 2-point tremolo systems commonly found. So the only thing we really need to do is to re-engage our template. And again, if you're just joining us, go back and look at the other episodes. I talk about the templates a lot because it's a unique way of building, not templates in general, but specifically the templates that I create. They've got off-body alignment points that allow me to put the templates on, take them back off, swap out different functions, put an HH in here, whatever I want to do. I did the same thing for the swimming pool route. It was a separate template, went on the alignment pins, it dropped in, it routed out. No alignment issues ever again. That is the most amazing thing, and it's this simple. You put the template back on, and now we're going to mark the hole locations that's going to be required for the hip shot bushings that mount the pivot screws. All right, so we're just going to do that, and that's one of the last things that we have to do. And I like to use just an 1/8" punch. All the holes that need to be drilled, I design to punch those holes and then drill them with the template off. And that way you don't wear out the template over time, that the holes get wider and wider and wider. In fact, all of the alignment pin holes are heat pressed with hardened steel drilling bushings to prevent wear over time too. So it won't lose the accuracy that's set. So I'm just going to tap these in. Again, just the 2 outer holes. So now we have these points marked. I can take just a little pencil and darken those up, but a brad point drill bit is going to track perfectly inside there. So all we've got to do is now go to the drill press and drill that hole to whatever specification. We could do it now, we could do it later, but I'd rather do it now and get that all set so I know everything is set and working perfectly prior to what we're going to do later on this episode is lop off those off-body alignment points. Once I get everything done prior to roundovers on the edges, I want those to be gone so the roundover bit can continue continuously all the way around. When you're going to drill these holes, you've got to figure out what size holes. Sometimes they're metric, sometimes they're standard, sometimes they're kind of in between. The best thing is to take calipers, and this ends up being 0.3815. So that's a little bit more than 3/8 of an inch. So maybe 3/8 is enough. Maybe it needs to be a little bit smaller than 3/8. Okay, how do you know for sure? The best thing that I have found and what I recommend is to drill holes of what size you think is the right size in a offcut of a body blank material. All right, and so I've got a 32/64, 1/64 less than 3/8, and I've got a 3/8. And what I can do is then take that and pound those in to see which one I like better. Well, I can tell you right now that 23/64 is not going to go. All right, it is way too tight, and if it takes that much effort to get it in, it's not right. So let's try the 3/8. And again, I'm using a hammer here, but when I actually go to press these in, I'm going to use my drill press, close the jaw all the way, put it on top, or even thread a bolt into there and wrap the chuck around that bolt, and then push it with pressure rather than with strikes of a hammer. But for this test fit, I figure this is good enough. Okay, that went in without too much effort, so that will press in nicely the 3/8. And you can see that's perfectly flush, and that's exactly what we want it to be. So that is awesome that we have that. Now, one thing I will suggest when you do your test holes for these things is that you drill it all the way through. Okay, because once you jam that in there, unless you've got a special tool to get that out, it is going to be miserable for you. So what I'll do at this time, since I've done that, is place that bolt over top of a hole in my workbench, and then I'll just tap it out. All right, that's simple. So don't forget to do that. Now these bushings are 3/4 of an inch long. So I'm going to set this depth, and I am going to go just a hair maybe over 3/4 of an inch. All right, so there we go, zeroed out. Now the tricky thing about this is you've already punched the hole, so there's already a point there. And you can see once the brad point is on there, I really can't move it left or right because the brad point is going to track perfectly in that. So I am just going to ease it in, and if it needs to self-center ever so slightly, I'm going to let the wood shift, and then once it kind of starts tracking, I'm going to hold on to the wood. Bam. Now the routing in this body is basically all done, but I am going to do one optional route while I still have my locator alignment pins on here. And that, don't worry, this is the weight relief template that we used on the other guitar we're building. And I am just going to borrow one of the weight relief areas on this template and use it for this pickguard style template. And that's this one right here. It will do a little extra weight relief. Not really concerned about that, but it will give me a pocket that connects to the other channel I've got here, the main electronics cavity. It will connect to that and allow me to do some electronic trickery. All right, so it's just space that I may or may not need depending upon what I install, but when I do install some electronics in these things, I like to use some extra space, and that is going to allow me room for it. So I'm going to route that out. So we've routed out that area, it connects with this area, so I can either use it or not use it. All of the pickguard screws are outside of these areas, so it doesn't interfere. If I cover it with a pickguard and don't use it, no big deal, but it's just a little extra thing that I like to do, and that is part of the weight relief. And the weight relief, the other areas, is only really good if you're putting a top over top of this area. But when we're using a pickguard with a solid piece of wood, we're not going to use these, but certainly we could use that to increase our capabilities. Now, before we lop off these alignment points, I'm going to do one other thing. It's time for the forearm contour. And I've got on this template the ability to trace a line to give a guide to where that forearm contour is going to be. So with the template in place, what I like to do is just take a nice sharp pencil and trace inside of these two little oval slots here. And that gives me something to guide with a ruler to set up for where that forearm contour is going to be. There's a couple different standards for this. This is the one I like, so this is the one that I used on the template. But if you like a different angle than that, maybe something that comes more like this, then just draw it on there and use that as your guide. Now, Another thing I like to point out, it's not so much critical for a Stratocaster style guitar, but if you're building more of a Tele style, it could be on a Strat, but you just rarely see it, and you're going to be using something like a Bigsby on there, then what you need to know is that that forearm contour cannot go underneath of the Bigsby. So you're going to have to move it out, and when I do that, what I do is the same basic angle, but I move it away, maybe a 3/4 of an inch to an inch, whatever I need to create the clearance for that Bigsby to sit flat. So there's something you have to keep in mind about a forearm contour. Depending upon your hardware, you may have to adjust it. I've got 3 ways that I could do the forearm contour. The most old school way is to use a block plane and just start working it down. And it's really pretty easy, especially if the block plane is sharp, to start making a dent in this, but it's going to take you a long time. But if you like that therapy of working with really nice shavings of wood, then that's the way to go, and it's pretty much dust free. Another way is to start off with a rasp, something like the Shinto rasp or a dragon file style rasp. So you can start just kind of working it away there, and this one works a whole lot faster. The goal is to get it down to a close line, perfectly level, and you still want to come over with the block plane, because that has a reference sole on it, and for the last little bit that you remove, that will assure that it's perfectly square, okay? Perpendicular and square and just flat. Now, there's other ways to do it. You could just produce a curve. I prefer to just produce a bevel and then soften the top edge here, but that's up to you. The other way is with a power tool like this. Now, this is a just a general angle grinder with a cut-saw carving disc on there, and this will take a ton of material fast, but not too fast that you lose control. But you do have to practice and develop a little finesse for it. But again, you're only looking to get it close, and then you're going to come back with your straight edge and check to make sure it's flat in both directions, and if not, you're going to work it with the block plane. So those are the ways that I go about doing this. In my Telecaster build series, I showed exactly the difference between all these different tools, and we're going to use this one for the belly contour, so I think I'm going to save that one and get that done later. However, when I said there were 3 ways to do it, those are the 3, but there's actually a 4th, and I've got a jig that I built for my table saw. I don't sell the jig, but you can watch a video. I'll give a link down below of that video. I think it's called The Fastest Forearm Contour in the West or something like that. You can search for it. But that is crazy fast and very accurate. But I built a jig that's kind of proprietary to my saw. And I'm going to go clean this up real quick with that cut. So we got a forearm contour in there. But depending upon the height of your blade, you may not be able to reach all the way up to the line. So don't put away your block plane, and then just come back and clean it up and get it nice and flat to that point. And then lastly, take your orbital sander or a little block sander and just round over the intersection of that line that we create when we created a constant angle plane. And now we'll bring you in really close so you can kind of see the nice consistent angle and the softened line where they come together. It's beautiful. All right, so how are we doing? Everybody keeping up? We're going to do the belly carve now, and I think I'm just going to do it on this one because that's really the last thing that needs to be done before moving and lopping off these alignment pin locations. Now, we technically don't need it to do the belly carve. All we need it for is to create the line that we're going to carve. So this is the rear template, the one that is used for obviously doing the tremolo spring cavity. And I wish there was a more automated way to do this, and there are other ways that you can do it, maybe with a little less dust and dirt, but there's not really any automatic ways other than using a CNC. So we're using this template to just trace where that area is going to be, and then we're going to just carve it out. Now, the other thing you have to decide is how deep do you want it to go, and traditionally I'll only go about 3/4 of an inch deep. So something like that at the midpoint. Once we get those done, I'm ready to move past the alignment pins. There's nothing else that needs to be routed on this one. This one, on the other hand, still needs, and I'll probably do it before I do the carve, still needs a little extra love because I've got to figure out a bridge. What should we do first? I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to carve this, and then I'm going to do this bridge on a separate episode. Not tied necessarily to this series, but you'll know to look for it. So we're going to put this guitar aside, but before I do that, I'm going to show you one last thing that is very critical before you lop off these alignment pins. On the rear cavity template set, basically we don't have this electronics cavity here. We have a larger one on the back that gives us the potential anywhere from 1 to 5 holes plus a blade switch. Now, the trickiest thing I've ever found is how do you cut that slot in the blades for the blade switch? Okay, how many of you out there have done it with a Dremel tool and taken it very carefully and done the best you could and cleaned it up with a file the best you could, and it ended up being too wide and it looked ugly and it just wasn't perfectly straight, on and on and on. You can't really do with precision that little tiny slot. It's difficult. Let's just put it that way. It's difficult. Nothing's impossible, but it's just difficult. I'm going to take the first template that we used and I'm going to lay it back. First template for the pickup routes. First template also for the routing of the profile of the guitar. And I'll show you a close-up of this template. It's not the same as the top loading standard, what we call our Suite S guitar series. This is the rear route Suite S. And this one actually has a humbucker single going on here with not a traditional single, but the EMG style, Jaguar style oval single coil. All right, and it's got up to 5 holes, like I said, that's available here. Well, we just happen to have 5 that is going to be in use of varying sizes, and this is the specialty feature that I wanted to show you. Instead of struggling with that blade switch slot, we've got the ability to not only mark and then drill the holes, but to use a bushing guide to make a perfect slot with our router. And here's the tools that we need to do it. We need a 5/16 inch guide bushing. We need a 1/16 inch router bit. And in this case, I've got a 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch router bit adapter, and then obviously we need the router. All right, and that is all spelled out right on the template. 1/16 inch bit with 5/16 inch bushing. Everyone knows that I recommend your first guitar build, it should be a Strat or a Tele. Tele is a little bit simpler, a little less complication in certain things with that, but they're both fundamental to building guitars, and you gotta start with the fundamentals. If you're gonna learn how to play tennis, you wanna start with the fundamentals. If you're gonna learn how to ride motorcycles, you wanna start with the fundamentals. It's all about fundamentals, and that's why I recommend that you start with at least a a Telecaster style guitar or a Stratocaster style guitar. This one piece here is one of those tricky things that people mess up when they're trying to do a fancy rear cavity Stratocaster style guitar, or any other guitar for that matter. So it is really this simple. I have a lot of people that email me all the time or call me and say, man, your videos gave me confidence to do it myself. Some of you still aren't at that point, and that's okay, but let me tell you straight ahead is I make this so easy it's almost unfair for everybody else, because it follows a very methodical process that I use to teach college kids that are learning how to do this. And all of the instructions that are most critical are written on the templates, engraved on the templates, so they don't wear off or go away. They're always there. You don't have to be digging in the drawer for instruction sheets that came with something that you bought 3 years ago. No, you use this hole in the bottom of the template to hang it on the wall, and you keep it there. And whenever you go to build the next guitar, it's there. The instructions that you need to refresh your memory is all there. It is pretty simple. Okay, so if you take very light passes and you just go nice and easy, you'll be fine. Let me show you how. I set my stop to about 7 millimeters. That should be more than enough to break through a 1/4 inch top. If any of you don't believe me, this is the easiest way that you will ever find to do that. I will give you a close-up so you can see this. That is a perfect 1/16 inch slot going all the way down, just enough that you need to flip that blade switch fully forward or fully back. Even from the belly side here, all the way through that 1/4 inch Claro walnut top. Perfect alignment with the screw holes. Part of the battle is education, part of the battle is experience and proficiency. The other part is having the right tools for the job. This little feature on this template that is standard with the Strat sets is the right tool for the job, and it makes it so simple. All right, the best way to do this is to really be in a well-ventilated area. Best thing I can do is turn on the dust collector, turn on the downdraft table, and try to evacuate as much of this dust as possible, because we are going to use this grinder to take the meat out very quickly, and then a few hand tools at the end. So you kind of see it's all about a flow. It's about a movement and a flow, and you have to practice it to get comfortable, but it really works fast, and it's very easy to do once you've done it a few times. Now that the easy work is done, now we're going to take the Dragon file and we're just going to work around to make sure that that is perfectly flat all the way around. If you get tired of filing, here's another thing you can use. And once you get it filed, then a little scraping. And then some final sanding. And I like to blend in this edge right here. All right, now that all my cutting is gone and I do not need a template back on here for any reason, now I can finally lose the off-body alignment pins. And you can see I just took a pencil and I followed the curve around. It does not have to be dead perfect. You know, you'll end up cleaning this up with a rasp and sandpaper and things like that, and you'll blend all the sides together anyway, making it all the contours perfectly smooth. You just have to get it close and then clean it up. Just close. That's all we need. All right, this part is messy, but we have got a really nice forearm contour. We just completed the belly cut, and we basically cleaned up all of the edges and smoothed them out on the spindle sander. And the off-body alignment points we removed prior to sanding and smoothing all the contours. So what we've got here is just a beautiful body that, if it weren't for some of the fractures in the wood, it may be a candidate for some type of translucent or clear finish. Maybe still is. Maybe still is. But there it is, right there, cleaned up. Alignment points gone. It is just nice. The next step. All right, we're not done yet, so hang in with me. You have to take a break every now and then and just kind of admire what you're working on. You know, my wife just, I think it drives her nuts. You know, we do a project, we paint a bedroom, and then I stand there for 3 hours looking at what a great job I did. She doesn't get it. Stand there longer looking at it than what it took me to paint it. All right, so we're going to go over the router table. We're going to finish that up, and then that's going to conclude this episode. On this guy here, we're going to do a separate episode on that Haynes 6 bridge, so look out for that, and that'll be kind of cool. And then off camera, I'm going to finish up the belly contour and then the round over on this. But I will tell you, the round over on this bad boy is going to be less. It's not going to be 3/8. It's going to be maybe 1/8 of an inch round over, just enough to break that edge and not go past where the wood, the back wood, and the top wood join together. So that'll be slightly different, but the exact same process is what we're doing. So a little round over, and let's meet back here. Okay, the one thing about doing the round over on the router table is that when the bevels are done, forearm contour and the belly cut is done, then you have to do the round over manually, because there's no way to get a round over bit to come down and hit that at the right angle. The only way to really do it with a tool other than hand tools is on a CNC with a ball mill bit that will cut out what appears to be a round over. All right, so I like to start back with the dragon file, and it's a visual thing. So I'm going to start chipping away at these corners until I get something that is pleasing, that has hopefully some amount of continuity with everything else. So I'll work close to the table, to being off the table, actually, so I have a little better grip. Now this is a pretty coarse file, so it'll work fast, but I'll need to switch to the finer file before I get done. All right, now we've blended that in so it matches the contours. It just feels smooth, it feels right. And the last one we've got to do is right here, and it's done the exact same way. A little naphtha is a pretty good way to tell if you're done sanding or not. Anyway, there's the round over, hand done to match the round over on the other edges done by a tool. And it's not hard, it's really, really close. The bottom line is you're watching a video of a guy who absolutely loves tools and jigs. And yet you can't be afraid of using hand tools sometimes and kind of going by feel rather than by the precision of jigs and the templates and such that I make. And this is one of those times. This is just the easiest way to do it. All right, everybody, have fun. I hope you did. It's fun for me because I'm the one working with the wood. But we have done a lot here. We finished drilling all the holes that we needed for the hardware. We did a little customization route. We completed a forearm contour, a belly cut, a round over on all the edges. We cut off the alignment pins finally. This body is really close to paint and whatever else I'm going to do with it. That is us wrapping up part 9 of this series. In part 10, we do some of the other things needed to get to the point where we dry fit all the pieces and parts here to make sure that dead center alignment is done. Okay, so episode 10 is a lot of prep work to include making the pickguard. And episode 11 following that will be a dry fit run, and then we'll get into painting and electronics and things like that. Don't forget to look up on the Maximum Guitar Works website in the link in the description below. Check out the different parts and templates and tools and things like that we have. Check out my Patreon page if you'll do, and if you're able to help with that, then that will go towards trying to fund someone to do my videos for me so I can put more out. But remember, no matter what you do in life, start with excellence.